Welcome to All Things Storybound, a creative outlet where any and all kinds of stories come to life.
From magical to mythical to mortifying, let us take you on a journey you've never experienced before.
Grab your favorite drink and get comfortable. You're in for a wild story ahead. Chapter 1.
The vast emptiness of space stretched before the Odyssey, a sleek exploration vessel gliding through the stars. The ship's young crew was accustomed to isolation. They were explorers, scientists, pioneers sent to chart regions of space beyond the reach of any human. But today, as they sat gathered around a flickering hologram in the ship's control room, there was something in the air they couldn't quite name. Was it excitement, curiosity, or a strange, low hum of fear? Captain Rena Zhao, sharp-eyed and steady-handed, leaned over the console, studying the incoming data. "Unknown signal detected," she murmured, zooming in on the location. "No registered markings. It's ancient." Her words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. "Could it be an old Earth satellite?" joked Tyler, the ship's engineer and self-proclaimed fixer of all things metal. He ran a hand through his messy curls, his smile quickly fading when he saw the intensity in her gaze. "No," Rena replied, her voice barely a whisper. "This is alien." They all exchanged looks. Alien. The word itself was thrilling and terrifying all at once. The crew, Rena, Tyler, medic Celeste Spaulding, science officer Sean Clark, and navigation specialist Zoe Morales, had been trained for unexpected discoveries, for uncharted phenomena. But the idea of an alien ship drifting out here in the void was the kind of thing they had only dreamed of. "Should we go in for a closer look?" asked Celeste, eyes wide with excitement. Sean, ever the cautious one, cleared his throat. "Protocol suggests we document the finding and report back to Central before attempting boarding." Rena considered this, but the curiosity burned brighter. Central's weeks away. If we leave now, someone else might find it before we get back. She locked eyes with each of them, searching for hesitation. Finding none, she made her decision. "All right, let's suit up." The derelict vessel loomed before them, a hulking shadow against the stars, its metal hull dull and lifeless. As the Odyssey drifted closer, they could see scars and fractures along the alien ship's body, evidence of some kind of struggle, or a warning to any intruders. The crew donned their EVA suits and filed into the airlock, nerves taut, adrenaline pulsing through their veins. Tyler's usual jokes had faded, replaced by a focused intensity as he gripped his tool belt. Zoe, who thrived on charting unknown territory, double-checked her navigation instruments, her face a mixture of eagerness and anxiety. "Systems check," Rena ordered. Her voice was calm, almost too calm, as if she were holding back the uncertainty in her mind. "Comms good," Sean replied. "Oxygen levels good," Celeste chimed in. "Weapons." Tyler patted the utility knife strapped to his side. "Well, not great, but let's hope we don't need them." Rena took a deep breath. "Remember, we're in unknown territory. Keep your eyes open and your heads on straight." The airlock hissed open, and they floated across the void toward the alien vessel, tethered to the Odyssey by thin cables that seemed fragile against the vast blackness of space. One by one, they entered a gaping entryway on the side of the alien ship, stepping into a darkness so thick it swallowed the light from their suit lamps. Inside, the silence was absolute. No hum of engines, no ambient machinery sounds, just an oppressive, eerie stillness. Their lamps illuminated walls covered in strange symbols, fluid and flowing, carved in deep lines and almost glowing in the dimness. "Does anyone recognize these?" Rena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sean scanned the symbols, brow furrowing. No known language match. And they look recent. like they're meant to lead us somewhere. He tapped the faint symbols, which ran in a path down the corridor. Lead us or warn us, Tyler muttered. As they moved deeper into the ship, they passed open doorways leading to abandoned rooms. Inside, shattered screens and twisted equipment lay strewn about, as if something had torn through in a frenzy. Occasionally, they saw stains on the walls, smudged and dark, that none of them wanted to speculate about. Celeste shivered. Whatever happened here, it wasn't normal. Define normal, Zoe murmured, glancing at a broken, oddly shaped console. There's nothing about this ship that even remotely looks like us. They pushed forward, reaching a central chamber where the floor was littered with strange, metallic objects, each giving off a faint hum. Rena picked one up carefully, examining its intricately woven structure. She couldn't begin to guess its function, but something about it made her skin crawl. "What do you think this is?" she asked, showing it to Sean. "Alien tech, obviously," he replied, though his tone was uncertain. "Looks like a storage device, a weapon. Hard to tell without running tests, but if it's still powered, it's probably dangerous." As Rena turned to place it back, her hand froze mid-air. A noise echoed down the corridor they had come from, a low, rattling sound, like metal scraping against metal. The crew went still, their heartbeats pounding in unison. "Did anyone else hear that?" Tyler asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Another sound followed, closer this time. A faint, skittering noise, as if something sharp and metallic was crawling across the floor, getting nearer. "Back to the entry point," Rena ordered, voice tight. She led the way, and the others followed, hurrying but silent. The sound grew louder behind them, clicking and echoing in the narrow corridors. Then, in the dim light, something moved. A shadow at the edge of their vision, something low and fast, skittering past the walls. "Rena!" Celeste gasped, grabbing her arm. Rena raised her lamp, her light catching something. Two gleaming eyes staring back at them, their glow reflecting an intense hunger, an animalistic intelligence that chilled them to the bone. The creature moved quickly, vanishing into the shadows, but the clicking noise continued, now surrounding them. "Run!" Rena shouted, breaking into a sprint. The crew bolted, rushing down the twisting halls, but every path seemed to lead them back to where they had started. The walls seemed to close in, the markings growing brighter with each passing second, as if feeding off their fear. Finally, they stumbled back into the entry chamber, only to find the way they came blocked by a wall that hadn't been there before. "We're trapped!" Zoe screamed, pounding on the solid metal. Rena looked around, gasping for breath. Their exit was gone, and the sounds were closing in from every direction. "Stay together," she commanded, though her voice betrayed her fear. The scraping, the clicking, it was getting louder, circling around them. Whatever was aboard this ship, it was hunting them.
Chapter 2.
The crew clustered close, barely daring to breathe as the alien sounds echoed through the corridors around them. For a few tense moments, silence hung in the stale air, amplifying their own heartbeats thundering in their ears. Then, as quickly as it had come, the clicking faded, leaving them alone once more, at least for now. Rena forced herself to steady her breathing and turned to the others, her expression hardened. "Okay, looks like our way out isn't an option anymore. If we can't retrace our steps, we'll need to map another route." "Great idea," Tyler muttered under his breath. "Except we're stuck in a maze designed by aliens with a penchant for horror." Sean cut in, his voice low but reassuring. "The Odyssey's sensors are still picking up our signals. We've got a direct line to the ship if things go wrong, assuming the comms hold out. Let's not waste any time." Zoe, ever the navigator, consulted her suit's scanner, the device casting a soft blue glow in the darkness. "If we head down this corridor," she whispered, pointing toward a passage on their right, We might be able to find an auxiliary hatch or some kind of access point. They moved in silence, carefully, eyes flicking to the shadows as they advanced. This part of the ship felt colder, and the walls were lined with symbols that glowed faintly under the beams of their helmet lamps. The deeper they went, the more they noticed changes in the architecture, as if the ship itself were alive. Celeste, ever the scientist, couldn't help herself. It's like the ship is evolving. These walls, they're not normal metal. They're reacting, almost breathing. Tyler snorted, though it was more of a nervous release than anything else. Let's just hope they're not planning to breathe us in. The corridor opened up into a large chamber, the floor littered with objects that gleamed in the dim light. Strange metallic devices lay scattered across the ground, some humming softly, others dark and cold. Celeste crouched down, carefully studying a piece that looked like a silver elongated box covered in delicate engravings. "Check this out," she murmured, brushing a gloved hand over its surface. "I've never seen anything like it." Sean joined her, scanning the object with his analyzer. "I'm picking up some kind of energy signature, but it's erratic. If I had to guess, I'd say it's a power source. But for what?" As they examined it, Celeste's fingers accidentally brushed a small button on the device's side. Instantly, the box sprang to life, emitting a soft, rhythmic pulsing. The engravings glowed with a deep blue light, casting an eerie glow across the chamber. Is that safe?" Tyler asked, eyeing the device with suspicion. I don't know," Celeste stammered, but she couldn't tear her eyes away. "This is incredible. It's like we're holding technology centuries beyond us." Rena's voice cut in, sharp and urgent. "Don't get too comfortable. Whatever made those sounds earlier could come back any second. Let's see what we can learn from these devices and keep moving." Sean took out his datapad, cataloging the device's details, while Celeste carefully set it back down, reluctant to let go. But as they continued to explore the room, they began to notice disturbing patterns. Strange scratches on the walls like claw marks, and dents in the metal as if something had slammed against it repeatedly. Zoe was the first to point it out. "These marks? They're fresh. Whatever's on this ship wasn't here alone." Her words hung heavy in the air, and a chill passed through the group. Each of them could feel it. They were walking in the shadow of something else, something with a violent history. Just as they prepared to leave the chamber, Tyler stopped, staring at the far end of the room. "Guys, check this out." They followed his gaze to a massive structure taking up the entire back wall. It resembled an archway, tall and smooth, its frame lined with the same intricate symbols. In the center of the arch was an empty void, swirling faintly with a shimmering energy that flickered like trapped lightning. That's some kind of gateway," Rena breathed, her mind racing. "But where does it lead?" Sean stepped closer, scanning it, his eyes widening as he deciphered the readings. "That is a portal, some kind of transport system. Whatever powers it has been depleted, but it's still holding residual energy. It could lead anywhere, another part of the ship, or somewhere we don't want to end up." A faint sound echoed from the hallway behind them, a familiar, dreaded clicking, louder than before. It was closer now, unmistakable. The creatures were coming back, and they were faster this time. "Forget the portal," Rena barked. "We need to move now." They bolted down a side corridor, sprinting as fast as their suits allowed. The clicking grew louder, followed by a guttural growling that sent shivers down their spines. The hallways seemed to twist and turn, leading them in dizzying patterns. It was as if the ship were intentionally changing, trapping them within its maze. They rounded a corner, and Sean suddenly stumbled, crashing to the ground. Celeste and Rena quickly doubled back to help him up, but Sean's face was pale, his voice shaky. I thought I saw something. A figure. Human. Just ahead of us." "There's no one else here," Celeste said, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. But Sean shook his head, his eyes wide. I know what I saw. Let's not argue about it here, Rena said, pulling him up. Keep moving. The lights in their suits began to flicker as if an unseen force were draining their power. The strange symbols on the walls pulsed in sync with the flickering, their light growing stronger as if feeding on the crew's fear. Zoe kept her eyes fixed on her scanner, her breath shallow as she struggled to maintain her bearings. Finally, they reached another door, this one larger and sealed with a thick metal panel covered in rust and grime. Tyler worked quickly, hacking the door's console, his fingers moving with an urgency born of sheer survival instinct. Come on, he muttered as he forced the last panel open, bypassing the alien mechanism. With a loud hiss, the door slid open, revealing a massive chamber beyond. Inside was an array of consoles and equipment, much of it still intact, though coated in layers of dust. In the center was a strange, cylindrical structure pulsing with a low hum, connected to what looked like control panels lined with buttons and screens. Sean's eyes lit up. This might be the control room. If we can access the ship's data, we could figure out what happened here, and maybe find a way out. But as they entered, the door slid shut behind them, locking them in. And then the clicking noise returned, louder than ever, from somewhere in the shadows beyond the control panels. Celeste glanced at Rena, her voice trembling. If this is the control room, who or what is controlling it now? Before anyone could answer, a distorted voice crackled over the intercom, speaking in a language that none of them recognized, but that filled the air with an undeniable menace. It was a warning, or perhaps an accusation, laced with malice. And it was clear, all too clear, that they were not welcome here. The last of the light from their suits flickered out, leaving them in complete darkness as the voice continued to echo through the chamber.
Chapter 3.
The alien voice crackled through the darkness, low and guttural, resonating with a sense of anger, or perhaps warning. Each word, though unintelligible, seemed to cut through the silence, filling the crew with a visceral dread. The voice faded, leaving only the silence and their own hurried breaths in the pitch-black control room. Is there a way to turn on any of these lights? Zoe whispered, her hand shaking as she held her flashlight, casting nervous beams over the alien consoles. But everything was still, the dust-laden consoles seemingly lifeless. Tyler moved to examine one of the control panels, his gloved fingers brushing over the unfamiliar buttons. If I can bypass a few of these circuits, I might be able to reactivate the lights, at least temporarily. Rena nodded. Do it. We need a better view of this room if we're going to find a way out. Tyler worked quickly, his breath shallow as he concentrated. Suddenly, the console sparked, and dim, red emergency lights flickered on throughout the chamber. The room took on an eerie crimson glow, casting strange shadows on the walls and illuminating the strange, cylindrical structure at the center. As their eyes adjusted to the red glow, Celeste pointed toward a row of screens on the far side of the room. Look. The screens, caked in dust but still partially functional, displayed distorted images. They showed various parts of the ship, each screen flickering and fading in and out. On one monitor, a darkened hallway revealed scratches and claw marks along the walls. Another screen showed a chamber full of pods, metallic, coffin-like structures arranged in perfect rows. And one screen, set apart from the rest, showed the very room they were in, though the image was blurred and static-filled. Wait, Sean said, frowning as he stepped closer to the central console. This camera feed. It's still recording. But it looks like something damaged the surveillance system. Maybe we can reverse the image and see what happened to the crew. Zoe bit her lip, glancing at the screens warily. Do we really want to know? Whatever happened, it didn't end well. Before anyone could answer, the static on the monitor in the center suddenly cleared and they all froze. The image showed the same room they stood in now, but there was a figure, a dark, twisted shape, standing near the console. Its skin was smooth and dark, glistening like polished metal, and its eyes, large and unblinking, glowed a sickly green. It was hunched and humanoid, with elongated limbs that stretched unnaturally, ending in claws that looked as sharp as blades. The creature stood there, motionless, its back turned toward the camera as if it were waiting. Celeste swallowed hard. "What is that?" Tyler's voice was barely more than a whisper. "Looks like it's guarding something." Rena tore her eyes from the monitor, taking a steadying breath. "We need to move. Whatever that thing is, we don't want to be here when it decides to check on us." But before they could react, a sound echoed from the hallway they'd just come through, a skittering, clicking noise, but louder, more insistent. It was close now, drawing nearer with each sound. The hairs on the back of their necks stood on end as they realized they were out of time. "Everyone, arm yourselves with whatever you've got," Rena ordered, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her fear. "Stay close and don't look back." Tyler retrieved his utility knife, while Sean grabbed a metal pipe from the ground, wielding it like a makeshift weapon. Rena took a deep breath, steeling herself as they turned toward the only exit, the same corridor from which the clicking was coming. They filed into the corridor, weapons raised, nerves on edge. The red lights cast long shadows along the walls, distorting the shapes of the crew as they moved. But as they reached the midpoint of the corridor, the clicking stopped. The silence was deafening. They waited, barely daring to breathe, ears straining for the faintest sound. And then, too fast to react, a shape burst from the darkness, its claws gleaming in the red light as it lunged at them. Zoe screamed, stumbling backward as the creature's arm swiped past her face, missing by inches. The creature was faster than anything they'd ever seen, a blur of dark limbs and glowing eyes. It slashed at Sean, who swung the pipe in desperate defense, landing a glancing blow. But the creature hardly seemed affected, its unblinking eyes focused solely on its prey. Rena didn't hesitate. She lunged forward, swinging the only weapon she had, her flashlight, smashing it against the creature's face. The impact shattered the flashlight, casting them into partial darkness, but the creature staggered back, momentarily dazed. "Run!" Rena shouted, grabbing Zoe's arm and pulling her forward. The crew sprinted down the corridor, the creature's snarling breath hot on their heels. They stumbled through the winding hallways, turning at random, desperate to put distance between themselves and the nightmare chasing them. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows darker and more suffocating with each turn. Finally, they burst into another chamber, the door sliding shut behind them with a soft hiss. They collapsed against the walls, gasping for air, their faces pale with terror. Sean clutched his side, wincing in pain. "We can't keep this up. It's like this thing knows every move we're going to make." Rena forced herself to calm down, her mind racing. "If we're going to survive, we need to outsmart it." Tyler, still catching his breath, pointed to a small terminal on the wall. "If we can access this console, maybe we can lock down some of these doors and buy ourselves time." Sean limped over to the console, fingers moving quickly over the alien symbols. "I'll see if I can rig a security override." As he worked, Celeste studied the room around them. There were more symbols here, different from the others, larger and more complex. They spiraled along the walls, meeting in the center where a panel jutted out from the floor, its surface engraved with the same flowing script they'd seen before. "Celeste, what is that?" Zoe asked, eyeing the panel with a mix of curiosity and fear. Celeste knelt beside it, carefully tracing the symbols. "It looks like a control mechanism. Maybe it's part of the ship's core, or something to do with the energy field we saw earlier." As she spoke, Sean's console beeped, and the door sealed with a solid thud. "Locked down," he said, his voice taut with relief. "That should buy us a few minutes." But even as he spoke, the panel in the center of the room began to glow, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed to sync with the hum of the ship itself. The symbols began to rearrange, moving and shifting as if alive. The crew watched, transfixed and horrified, as the symbols formed an image, a map of the ship. It was complex, vast, but one thing was clear. Their location was marked by a pulsing red dot. And so was another point, a point moving toward them, closing in fast. "It's tracking us," Rena whispered, her stomach twisting with dread. But Celeste's eyes were fixed on something else. Near their marked location was another, larger chamber with what looked like a central energy source. "Look, this must be the ship's main power grid. If we can get there, we might be able to shut down whatever systems are powering these creatures." Sean frowned. "Or we could activate something even worse. We don't know how this tech works, and one wrong move could end us all." Tyler shook his head. "We're running out of options, and fast. If we stay here, we're dead." Rena weighed their options. They could wait, hope the creature would lose interest, or make a break for the power grid and risk everything on a slim chance of survival. "Everyone stay sharp," she said, voice steely. "We're going to that power grid. If this thing is tracking us, we'll make sure it has a fight on its hands." They took one last look at the map, memorizing the route. Then, with renewed resolve, they opened the door, stepping back into the darkened corridors. And somewhere in the shadows, a pair of glowing eyes watched, waiting.
Chapter 4.
The corridors twisted around them, narrowing and branching like an endless alien labyrinth. Every step was tense, each sound a trigger for their frayed nerves. Despite the map they'd seen, the ship felt as if it were constantly shifting, leading them deeper into the unknown. The walls were alive with pulsing symbols, glowing faintly as if feeding on their fear. "Just a few more turns to the power grid," Zoe whispered, clutching her scanner as if it were a lifeline. Tyler shot her a look, his voice taut. "Are we sure it's going to be there? This whole place feels like it's messing with us." Rena held her hand up to silence them. "Stay focused. One wrong move and that thing will be on us again." As they pressed forward, Celeste noticed something odd about the walls. A dark, sticky substance streaked across them, glistening in the dim light. Is that blood?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Sean examined it, his face grim. "Not blood, but it's organic. Whatever happened here, it involved something alive and not human." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. They were walking through a place that had seen violence, desperation, and fear. And somewhere within this labyrinth, something waited for them, following their every move. They reached the entrance to the power grid chamber, a massive metal door lined with more strange symbols. As Sean began to work on the door's console, Celeste caught sight of something on the ground. Scratches, like claw marks, deep and gouged into the metal. She shivered, feeling a creeping sense of dread. With a loud hiss, the door finally opened, revealing the heart of the alien ship. Inside, the chamber was immense, dimly lit by the dull glow of a central machine, towering above them with twisted, branching cables and tubes. The walls were lined with screens, some of them flickering with static-filled images of other parts of the ship. Others displayed rows of symbols that pulsed in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. "What is this?" Tyler asked, his voice laced with awe and fear. Celeste approached the central machine, running her hand along its strange, almost organic surface. "It's a power source, but it's like nothing I've ever seen. It's alive in a way, like it's sustaining the entire ship." Zoe's eyes were fixed on the screens. "Look," she whispered, pointing to one of the monitors. It showed the corridor they had just come through, and on the edge of the screen, a shadow figure moved silently, its glowing eyes fixed on the path. Brenna's heart raced. "It's still tracking us." Sean's hands moved quickly over the controls, his face tensed. "I'm trying to override the power feed. If I can shut this down, maybe it'll disable whatever tech is driving that thing." But as he worked, something strange began to happen. The lights in the room flickered, and the symbols on the walls pulsed faster, the energy within the machine seeming to intensify. A low hum filled the air, growing louder, vibrating through their suits and into their bones. And then they heard it. The alien voice from earlier, crackling over the speakers, this time louder and clearer, as if it were right beside them. The words were still indecipherable, but the tone was unmistakably hostile, filled with a deep, chilling malice. Celeste took a step back, clutching her helmet, her breathing fast and shallow. "Does anyone else hear that? That voice? It's like it's in my head." Tyler's eyes darted around, fear etched across his face. "It's everywhere. I can't tell where it's coming from." The voice grew louder, filling the room until it seemed to drown out their thoughts. The symbols on the walls pulsed in time with it, drawing them in, hypnotizing them. Each of them felt it differently, visions, memories, flashes of fear, but the effect was the same. It was as if the ship itself were trying to tear them apart from within. Sean's fingers trembled as he continued working on the console, the voice ringing in his ears, filling his mind with distorted images. He saw faces he knew, crew members he'd lost, all of them twisted and warped, reaching out for him, calling his name. I can't do this," he muttered, his hands shaking. Rena grabbed his shoulder, her voice fierce. "Focus, Sean. You're stronger than this. Whatever it's trying to show you, it's not real." Sean clenched his jaw, fighting back the images. His fingers steadied as he made the final adjustments, and with a low hum, the machine's energy levels dropped, the lights in the room dimming. The alien voice faded, and the symbols on the walls stopped pulsing. Silence fell over the chamber. Celeste exhaled, her voice shaking. Did we do it?" But before anyone could answer, a warning alarm blared through the ship. One of the monitors flashed with an image of the ship's exterior, where a faint red glow had begun to spread from the center, pulsing outward like veins. Sean's face went pale. "It's activating a self-destruct sequence." Rena's heart sank. "We must have triggered it when we powered down the core." Tyler swore under his breath. "This whole ship is a trap. It was never meant for anyone to survive." Zoe's voice was barely more than a whisper. "We need to get out, now." They turned toward the exit, but as they reached the door, the clicking sound returned, echoing through the corridors, louder and more frantic than before. It was coming for them, fast. They sprinted through the darkened halls, the alien voice now replaced by a shrill, mechanical countdown in a language none of them recognized. The ship shuddered around them, as if struggling against its own destruction, the walls warping and twisting as the core's energy began to destabilize. They reached the intersection leading back to the entry chamber, only to find their path blocked by one of the creatures, its eyes glowing, its claws glistening in the dim light. It crouched, poised to attack, blocking their only escape route. Brenna raised her broken flashlight, gripping it like a weapon. "We have to get past it. Stay close and move when I say." The creature snarled, its long limbs stretching out as if prepared to strike. Brenna locked eyes with it, her gaze fierce and unyielding. "Now!" she shouted, lunging forward as the others followed, ducking and weaving as the creature lashed out with razor-sharp claws. Brenna swung her flashlight, the shattered end scraping against the creature's face, forcing it back just enough for them to squeeze past. They raced down the corridor, the sounds of the countdown and the ship's rumbling growing louder with each step. Finally, they reached the entry chamber, but their ship was gone, detached from the ship during the chaos. Despair flickered across their faces as they realized the trap was complete. They were stranded on a ship on the brink of destruction with no way out. Sean's voice cracked. "Is this it? We're just going to die here?" But Celeste's eyes, full of determination, fixed on the panel beside the door. "The portal we saw earlier. If it's connected to the power grid, maybe it's still active." Tyler looked skeptical, but he nodded. "It's a long shot, but it's the only one we've got." They retraced their steps to the portal room, the walls now buckling, the symbols flashing erratically as the ship's systems spiraled into chaos. The portal flickered weakly, barely holding its form, the shimmering energy within it wavering like a mirage. Without hesitating, Rena stepped up to the portal and turned to face the others. "We go together. Whatever's on the other side, it has to be better than this." One by one, they entered the portal, the energy washing over them, distorting their vision as they were pulled through. The ship's alarm faded behind them, replaced by silence, darkness, and an intense, disorienting cold. When they emerged, they found themselves in a vast, empty space, a void where no stars shone, no planets orbited. The cold was all-consuming, a silence so complete it felt like the universe itself had abandoned them. Celeste tried to speak, but no sound came out. She looked at the others, their faces filled with the same dawning horror. Whatever this place was, it was not the salvation they had hoped for. Then, in the distance, they saw it. A single pair of glowing eyes, watching them, waiting. The realization sank in. They had escaped the ship, but not its nightmare. They were trapped in the void, along with the creature, forever. And in the endless silence, a final thought echoed in their minds, a warning from the alien voice they'd never understood. Some doors were never meant to be opened.